fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger. So
all the things you thought you would do when you're older and have more time, do it now.
Hey you. Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. A podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey, any youngers. What's going on? It's me, your host, Jen Glantz. Welcome back to another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about this one person. I have been sort of stalking them on social media. I've been thinking about them and just keeping up with their life sort of secretly, right? Never actually met them in person, and I know this sounds super creepy, but we all have those people that we sort of follow on the internet but don't really know. And this person does live in New York City, but again, I never thought I would run into them. Last week, the craziest thing happened to me. It was 4:30 and I decided to take a little break from my day, and I ended up going to take a spin class. And it was a spin class like I would never take. It was in the middle of nowhere in New York City, and it was empty, and I went, and all of a sudden, that person that I stalk and follow and secretly obsess about online walked into the class. I couldn't believe it. I thought to myself, how is this possibly happening? It is 4:30 on a Monday. There are millions of things people could be doing. How are we both in the same spin class in a neighborhood that neither of us live in? And I know that sounds extra creepy because you're like, Jen, how do you know where this person lives? But the person posts about where they live all the time. Point being, has that ever happened to you? Have you ever dreamt about somebody, thought about somebody, and then you bump into them? Especially when it's somebody that you just never, ever thought you would see again. It's creepy. It's weird. It's almost like the universe is trying to tell you something, but you don't know how to react. And of course, you're probably thinking, well, Jen, did you talk to this online celebrity that you stalk religiously? And the answer is no. The entire spin class, I thought about, okay, what are you going to do when you're off the bike? Are you going to go up to her? What are you going to say? And then class ended, and I made sure to casually walk out of class with her side by side. I even walked an extra block in the wrong direction side by side with her, but I didn't say a word. I didn't know what to say. It's like when you meet your favorite celebrity, what do you say? You did great in that movie, you're great with that song, or do you just sit there silent and stare and think about how crazy it is that there are so many people in this universe, but there you are, the two of you in the same place at the same time. If this has ever happened to you, you will admit that it is such a weird feeling. It's like the universe read your mind, and when it happened, I just couldn't stop smiling and laughing, and I just thought to myself, you gotta just trust the world sometimes, and our thoughts are pretty powerful, and maybe there are such things as coincidences. Either way, things happen in our lives, and when they do, you either gotta laugh at them, accept them, or question why in the world they're happening. Today's guest on the show is somebody I am so excited to bring on. Her name is Brittany Hennessy, and she is the best-selling author of Influencer, Building Your Personal Brand in the Age of Social Media. She's the co-founder of Carbon, a tech company building solutions for influencers. Brittany is the former senior director, influencer strategy and talent partnerships at Hearst Magazine's digital media, and the first person to hold that title. Look at that. She is a pioneer in the influencer marketing industry, and she lends her expertise to brands, small businesses, and influencers as a consultant. Brittany answers questions for you like, how do you bring your personal brand onto social media in 2019, and what it takes to be an influencer, and what should you do if you are more of a private person? She answers all of these questions in our interview today. And hey, as you're listening to this interview and you like it, take your phone, scroll down, hit the 5 stars on iTunes, write us a quick review. You know it means the world to us. And also, Come hang out with us in the secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. We would love to see you there. You'll learn things like our book club's happening in October. We're having an LA meetup in September, and so much more. Brittany, let's dive right in. My first question for you is how I like to start the show off always. How would you describe yourself to a person you just met at a party?
Ooh, a person I just met at a party. Okay. I would probably tell people that I'm a mom. I always like to make sure people know that I'm a mom. So I'm a mom and I am an entrepreneur and I work to help people turn their brands into businesses.
I love that description, and I love that you made it very clear to start off with being a mom. Why did you make that intentional decision to say that first in your bio?
I think it's really important, because I think we live in a time where people are very concerned with becoming a parent and figuring out how that's going to work if they want to excel in the workplace, if they want to be an entrepreneur, and not just for moms, also for dads too, like people are starting to get what they call daddy tracked. And, since people think I'm very successful, they know I had great success in the corporate world and then out on my own, I like to make sure people know that I'm a mom because then they see, oh, wait, she did this and she's a parent. So this is something that can totally be done. I can probably do it too. And then I think it gives people that encouragement to not give up on what you're trying to do simply because you've decided to have a child. Not the end of the world. It's just parenting.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll be totally honest with you. It's something on my mind. I'm thinking about it all the time, about having kids and will that change my career? And I love hearing from moms who are, every mom is a superhero. And I love hearing from moms who say, you know what, I had kids, but I still have my career. And I think that that's so badass. So thank you for sharing that with us. I read an article on Girl Boss that you wrote, and you said that there were 3 words that completely changed your life. And those 3 words were why not me? And I would love for you to share why those words had a major effect on you.
Sure. So, I think it's a mantra that I picked up when I was very young, and I only was able to, distill it down into 3 words as I got older. But I always thought, all these things are happening. Like, why can't I try and do that? And, I think you look and you're like, oh, I can't, I'm not fast enough to do this, or I'm not smart enough to do that, or I'm not popular enough to do this when you're a kid. But I always was just like, well, I'll just try. And what's the worst that can happen? Nothing. Well, that's where I am right now. And so then you learn that if you have those thoughts, plenty of people have those thoughts. And those exact thoughts is what makes competition almost non-existent in a lot of places because everyone's too scared to start. So the few people who actually go out and try to do the thing, you're probably going to have disproportionate success because you're out there by yourself. And who else is going to win if, there's only one person running? So I really just started saying, I'm just going to try it. Somebody has, even with contests, I think when I was a kid, I won a lot of sweepstakes. I had so many things, sweepstakes, raffles, sending a postcard for Nickelodeon. And I always thought someone has to win. Why can't it be me? And then, someone's got to get this job. Why not me? Someone has to, land this deal. Why not me? And really, when you start to think about the answer to that question, when you try to pinpoint why you couldn't do something, you usually come up short because it's just a gut reaction to be like, oh, I can't do that. But it's actually not true once you try to wrap some logic around it.
I really like that. And how can people wrap logic around that? So I know, especially for myself, when I'm feeling like, oh, I'm a little nervous to do this. Am I qualified? Do I know enough? I know that I start asking myself why? And then eventually I'm like, you know what, Jen? It's because you doubt yourself. Nobody else in the world did. So do you have a technique for people who want to go after something, but they feel like, you know what, maybe I'm not the smartest or the best or this or that? What can they do to break that logic?
So I think there are a few things you can do. The first thing I like to do, which I think is super helpful, is pretend like the opportunity happening is happening for your friend and not for you. Because we are very quick to tell our friends, and sometimes even to a fault where maybe they probably shouldn't do something because maybe they're not qualified, but we're like, you can do that. You wrote this book and you have this podcast and, you landed this deal. Of course you can do it. And, our friends are like, you're right. Okay, I'm going to try. But then when it comes to ourselves, we just go down that path of self-doubt. So I always say, you have a friend, she was offered this deal, or this opportunity. What would you tell her? And then just write it out and just say, you have 10 years experience in this. You got a big deal that other people couldn't get, and just start writing out those things. And then when you look at it, one of two things will happen. One will be you don't really have much to say. And it's okay. Not every opportunity is meant for you at every moment. So it's fine if it actually doesn't work out. But more times than not, you'll be able to see like, I actually can do this and I'm qualified and I shouldn't be so afraid. And I think another way to like just work this into your daily life is try to do things that make you a little uncomfortable, because, you can look at something like, I went bungee jumping last year. Surely I can raise my hand in this meeting, so start like doing other things that maybe aren't necessarily career related, but that make you feel like a badass, because that's, energy you can channel when you feel like maybe you need a little bit of a boost.
Ooh, I really like that. I think that's so great, because then when you're facing something where you're like, I don't know, is this hard? You're like, well, you just went bungee jumping last week, so you can really get through everything. I think that that's just a great way of building your tolerance.
Yeah, it's all these things are really techniques that when you do them often, it just turns into a critical part of who you are. And it still happens a little bit, but for the most part, I don't have as much self-doubt as I used to, because my autopilot is leaning more towards, you can do this, don't be scared, as opposed to, oh, I don't know, can I do this? So it really is training your mind to go to one place and not another. And the longer you do it and the more you do it, the easier it gets.
I also love in the article there you mentioned, when opportunities come your way, say yes and figure it out later. When it comes to putting ourselves out there, accepting opportunities, why is that the best mindset that we could have?
Again, it goes back to people tend to overthink things and, put themselves in positions and bury themselves when it's really not necessary. And the story I have behind that is, in, I think, 2011, I had a really prominent nightlife blog. I had been recommended by a bunch of people who knew me and quite a few that I didn't to be, this is before I think they were even using the word influencer, to be the brand ambassador for Nivea for their 100th anniversary. And the whole spiel was like, we're going to fly you to Germany. You're going to take the Nivea cruise, go to the factory, hang out with Rihanna for 3 days, and you just have to tweet about it. And the first thing I thought was, oh, I don't have a passport. But instead of me going, oh, I would love to, but I don't have I just was like, okay, I'll be there. And then when I hung up, I was like, okay, I've got a lot to do, because I have to get a passport. I have to figure out how I'm going to get off work. I had to figure out all these things. But because I had already said yes, I was much more motivated to get those things done. And at the end of the day, my coworkers were like, fine, we'll take your shift, but you better bring me back something signed by Rihanna, which was easy to do. And then I learned that you can get a passport as long as you have, a confirmed itinerary, flight or hotel. You can get a passport same day. So now imagine if I would have said no because of all of those things, I would have missed what ended up being a very pivotal moment in my career and really turning me towards social media, because of something as simple as getting a shift covered and, not having a piece of paperwork that's pretty easy to get. So ever since then, I've really just been like, I'm just going to say yes, because when you spend a lot of time, networking and relying on your community that you've built, and you should always build your community before you need them. But when you've built this community, when a really good opportunity comes your way, they are always happy to help you achieve whatever that goal is, because that's your tribe and they want you to do well. And so you'll find out that whatever the obstacle is to keep you from achieving that goal, you have plenty of people who can help you get around it.
And you also have yourself. I think it's so great that you put the trust in yourself that, you know what, I'm going to say yes to this and I'm not going to let myself down. I'm going to get the passport. I'm going to get all the little things I need to get done in order to go. And if you have that faith in yourself, then saying yes to scary opportunities won't really be that scary in the end, because you always have your back too, which I think is so important and really shows how strong of a person you are as well.
Yeah, I think, that goes two ways, because I think a lot of that self-confidence comes from putting myself in unnecessary situations in the past. My mom has always said, why do you always have to do things the hard way? And I've tried now. I think I've gotten to a place where I'm trying to do things the easiest way, the path of least resistance. But for a very long time, it was, okay, what's the most difficult way I could overcome this? And so I think, again, it's a practice that if you are constantly putting yourself in situations, you adapt. And because I've done things way more difficult than get a passport, I was pretty confident that I could get that done. And so all of that is really just preparation so that you have self-confidence, community, and just, it's almost like decision-making reflexes where you're like, I can do that. I can do that. Because so many people say no to things that could change your life because of something really small. And that's always the biggest shame because those people really never get over those losses.
Oh, I love that so much. I'm writing down that quote because I want to put it on a sticky note. I think that is so, so, so amazing that so many people do say no to things that can change their lives because of something so small, and I love that. I want to talk now about your book. You wrote the book Influencer, Building Your Personal Brand in the Age of Social Media. What drove you to write this book?
So for the past really 10 years, I've worked in influencer marketing at a brand, at an agency, at a publisher. And as it's been growing and turning, people kept creating resources for brands. There were all these books for brands and tech platforms and conferences. And, booking influencers, you'd always see them make like these huge blunders as creators and also as business people. And, it really ended up being like the corporate world and the brand world would constantly be like, oh, influencers don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. And I just looked at it like, we're getting all this help. This is why we know what we're doing. Who's helping creators figure out how to be a better partner, how to create better content, how to service their audience, how to negotiate a brand deal? And so I had been thinking it over, like, what could I do? Could I write an article or maybe like speak at a conference? And my husband really had the idea, Alexander, of writing the book. He's like, you're a journalism major. You love writing. Like, you should write something. And then for me, it became a way to divulge the secrets of the trade from a brand perspective that I couldn't always give, at work. And a great example is I was booking an influencer. She's a professional ballet dancer. And I had $10,000 in my budget to give her to dance and then to post the content that we created. And she's not a big influencer, but she's a big dancer. And she told me that she'd do it for $2,500. And I couldn't believe it because I was about to give her $10,000. And she only asked for $2,500 because she had no idea how much she was worth. And this kept happening and kept happening. And then you'd see influencers really make huge contractual mistakes because they didn't understand what they were reading. And so that was like, okay, there are like major issues that need to be addressed in this industry if any of us are going to have a career doing this in 10 years. And I didn't really see anybody else doing it. It was more like every influencer's individual perspective, but that's not something that's going to be a blueprint and work for an industry. And so that really motivated me to write the book and get that information out there so at least we all can start on the same page.
Okay, the book is fantastic, and I completely recommend it for really everyone. I mean, people who want to be an influencer, but people just who want to understand influencer culture and up their personal brand. But I got to ask you, I mean, the $10,000 thing, I'm sitting here cringing because that is such a mistake that anyone would freak out about. I mean, in your experience, and your book does help with this, but how do people in general know the worth of their personal brand? Like, how can you just know that? Is there an easy way? Is there a science behind it? Is that something that you coach people for? How do you know how much to charge as you're building up that personal brand?
So I think what people need to realize, especially content creators, but anyone who gets hired to do something, everything you're doing is a billable task. And like lawyers will tell you this, they will bill you for sharpening pencils. So everything is a billable task. And I think, you look at creators, and any sort of like, when I say influencer too, I categorize influencers as like creators, performers, entrepreneurs, anyone who's like building a following so that they can have influence over that following. So if you're like a fashion blogger, which is the most common type of influencer, I guess, and a brand asks you to like create some content, well, you're not just taking one photo and slapping a caption on it and throwing it on your Instagram. There's a whole production that goes behind that. You have to research the brand, There are people who are brand research analysts. That's their job. So you should be charging per hour that you're doing that. You have to scout location, also a real job. You have to do your own hair and makeup, also real jobs. Style your wardrobe, shoot the content, edit the content, write the copy, engage with the audience after the content is live. And that's just on your end. That's not even negotiating your contract, creating a mood board, going back and forth on deliverables. These are all jobs that people do 40 hours a week. Just because you're one person doing them all doesn't mean you need to back that into, well, I only have this amount of followers, so this is what I can charge. That's crazy. There's a whole production fee, and that's just the work you're doing to create this piece of content. The distribution is then when it's like, okay, well, how many followers do you have? What's the target demo, engagement rate? Then you get into all of that. But that's a completely separate price from what it costs to make that content. Creative agencies don't post anything. They just make content, but they have rates for that. And I think that's the thing creators have not really gotten a hold of yet, which is the cost to make this content and the cost to post it are not the same. They're two separate pieces.
Oh, for sure. I made this mistake even with speaking engagements. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll definitely speak. And I lowball the price. And then I'm sitting here for 16 hours planning out the talk, making the presentation, getting myself ready.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm making pennies for this talk right now, you know? So you're exactly right. And I think that's why a book like this and a person like you are so great, because people need to know the truth about this. And I think it was very interesting how you define what an influencer is. And I think a lot of people, not a lot of people, but maybe people listening to this are like, oh, influencers, they're people who just want to take pictures of themselves and make some fast money. So can you tell us what reasons should people have when they want to become influencers, whether it's in their own industry or for a specific hobby that they have?
So that's a great question. And there are a few reasons. You know, I always think it's very silly that there's this like negative connotation around influencers. Like these are people who work on their own schedule, doing something they love, and a lot of them are getting paid an insane amount of money to do it. How is that not something everyone is striving for? I do not know. Like, would you really rather have a boss and like a salary? Some people maybe because it's very secure, but in 2019, that's not even really true. And so I always look at it like, being an influencer is really just a way to increase the value that you bring to the table, regardless of what the actual end game is. And I think, you know, younger influencers, people our age and older, we're really in this place where influencer marketing like came up, maybe a bunch of people, you know, who do it, or like, you know, maybe they were shallow or something. But younger people, you know, Gen Z and whatever is after Gen Z, I don't even know, because those people are like 6 years old. But that next, I think they're Generation Alpha. They look at it as just something that, you know, is akin to like a college degree. It's like, oh, I have a bachelor's in this and I have this following. It's just something that makes them better. And they all have these, you know, larger goals where some of them are like, I really want to be on a TV show. And if I have this built-in audience, that'll make me more attractive to a casting director. Or I want to have an album and this community that's likely to buy my product will make me more attractive to a record label. Like a lot of young people aren't actually doing branded content because that's not the goal. They're using it as a tool to get somewhere else. And I think that's a lesson everyone can take out of their book, because if you are an expert in your field, whether that's medical, you know, food, travel, whatever it is, and you are going out for a new job, your years of experience and your college degree and all of those things help. But so does saying, you know, I have this community that when I create something on the clock and I share it to you, it has a broader reach. And I'm considered an expert. So I am, you know, on the Today Show, or I'm featured in Forbes. All of these things are investing in you, and you can take these things when you leave your workforce. And I think, you know, being an influencer is one thing, but being like an entrepreneur, like someone who's really trying to make change within a company, people tend to make the mistake of aligning so much of who they are and what they're capable with their job title. But if for some reason you want to quit that job, or it's not making you happy, or you get laid off, people don't know who they are anymore. And that's because they haven't built anything independent of their company. And for me, I was at Horizon. I was also at Hearst, which is like the mecca of influencer marketing from like a brand perspective, with like Cosmo and Elle and Harper's Bazaar and these like iconic brands. It was always important for me to also have a relationship with people outside of just my job title and status outside of just my job title. Because what happens when I don't work there anymore? Do I fade into oblivion? And that was not an option for me because I had worked too hard. So I think, building your brand even while you work somewhere is so important because it gives you added value for your employer, but also for anything you do after that.
I have a question from somebody in the You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. This is from Allie, and she says, Brittany, I loved your book, and I'm curious, what about for a person like me who's very private? There are details of my life that I'm not eager to share online. Can I still be influential in my industry? And if so, how?
Oh, that's a great question, Allie. And, I think there are lots of different types of influencers. Some of them are open books, and they really share anything and everything, but that's probably, it's very akin to the type of person they are, and they probably do this in real life too. But if you look, there are influencers who are very topic specific, and they just speak on those topics. There are fashion influencers, who have a husband and they have children, and they never talk about them because they don't want to. This is their thing, and they don't involve their family for, more promotional reasons or even for personal reasons. Sai De Silva, she scouts the city. She has an Instagram and her children are on it, but her husband's not because he doesn't want to be. So we've never seen his face. Never, never, never. People who know them know what he looks like, but that's not a part of her life that she shares. And so I think, it's perfectly fine to draw boundaries and just to say, these are the things I'm going to talk about and these are things I'm not going to touch. And then just keep to those because people know you're a person who has a real life outside of, social media. And unless your brand is being completely open and honest, people aren't going to expect that from you. So I think, just draw your own lines and be comfortable with them. And also know that it's okay to change. Maybe you don't want to show your kids because they're babies, but when they're old enough to consent to being on your Instagram, maybe you're fine with that then. So it's okay to modify your stance. Just be very clear with it and be okay with the choices that you're making.
I think that's great, and I think that hopefully lets people realize, again, social media is not a reflection of every part of your real life. It's what you choose to put out there. So you can really decide how you want to present yourself and how you want to brand yourself and put yourself out there in the world. I know a popular question that people listening are going to want to know is, how in the world do you build a following? And I know that this question is one that you would need a long time to answer because it's complicated, and your book dives so deep into that. But do you have maybe one or two quick tips for how people who are just starting out being influential in their industry can build that initial following?
I think the easiest way, and no one does this, which is crazy, is to tell people you're on social media. And I think it drives me crazy. I will meet people and I will talk to them for 10 minutes. And only later will they DM me and be like, hey, I'm so-and-so and you're talking to me. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me your Instagram handle while we were standing there? It's very much exchanging handles is the new exchanging business card, because the business card, I'm going to lose that by the time I get home. And now I'm not going to remember your name or your email or where to find you. But if you're having a good conversation with somebody, it's a perfect opportunity to just pop in and say, hey, follow me on Instagram.
I think that's so good. And Brittany, please tell us right now what your Instagram is so that people can real time follow you.
Oh, yeah. I love followers. Follow me. I'm Mrs. Brittany Hennessy on Instagram. And my Instagram is fun. I like to do informational stuff, but I also recently started getting into making very influencer specific memes. And I think they are very funny.
I've been following you, and I think they're really great too. You're a great person to follow because you do post such real stuff, but you give such great tips, and it's a pleasure to follow someone as awesome as you on social media. We do have another question from Heather in the group. She says, Brittany, I'm curious about how influencers will evolve as they get older to remain relevant to the people who they appeal to right now.
Oh, that's a really good question. So I think you're looking at a few things. I always tell influencers, definitely want to have an end goal. So whether that is, becoming a media property, which I think is something that's becoming more common as influencers really see themselves as people who have super successful blogs, or turning it into some sort of tangible brand. And that's a clothing line or, a travel line or whatever it is you want to do. And so I think you're looking at influencers do that. And I think It depends really. It's sad because so much of what happens in influencer marketing really is dependent on the social media platforms and what they're going to allow, because that's so much where the influence is taking place. But I think you're going to start seeing larger influencers have their own app communities where, they just are fostering a community of 1 million people who are talking to each other. And then we're really going to have extremely shoppable lives. And I think, we're all like, there's so many new products. We're constantly being bombarded with digital advertising, but there are so many great things to try. And these are people who no longer need television budgets or huge ad budgets or, at a physical store for you to learn about them. So I think we're really moving towards the everyone is an influencer phase of things where, plenty of people are going to be the types of people you go to for recommendations. And depending on how much you choose to lean into that will determine your revenue in this business. But I think, the gig economy is up and all of these things, and people are just going to find different ways to be influencers. And that could be having a really great blog, a really fantastic newsletter that comes out once a week, a great Amazon store where you have, affiliate links. There's going to be lots of different ways, but I think it's going to be something that's impossible to ignore. It's very much like the beginning of social media where people are like, do I really need a Facebook page? And now everyone has a Facebook page. I think that's where we're going.
I think that's so interesting and awesome. And Brittany, you've given us so many tips and we are so grateful for you. I do want to end the interview how we always end it. So fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger. So
all the things you thought you would do when you're older and have more time, do it now.
I love that. Brittany, thank you so much. Please tell our listeners where they can find out more about you. And of course, grab a copy of your book.
You can visit BrittanyHennessy.com and it'll have links to all of my stuff.
That is so easy. And we will link to that in the show notes. Brittany, thank you so much again for coming on the show. Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.